I remember a quote by another insurance carrier executive when they were talking about the AI and the impact of AI on cybersecurity and the vulnerabilities that could come out of it. And he said, the two letters that keep me up at night are not AI, they're XP. It's because he's not worried about the AI. He's worried about those old, unpatched, end-of-life systems that are still prevalent.
Yes.
And so when you think about, reasonable standards, let's make sure that they're patching their systems. Let's make sure that they've got multi-factor authentication. Let's make sure they've got a backup. Let's make sure that we can know that they're doing all those things.
Folks, I'm so excited to introduce our next guest, Doug Kreitzberg, founder and CEO of SeedPod Cyber, to talk about cyber insurance. Cyber insurance is the fastest growing revenue segment in the MSP space. And Doug is here to talk about how he is working with MSPs to bring cyber insurance to small businesses. According to Doug, 43 to 53% of cyber attacks target small businesses, and yet only 10% of small businesses have any cyber insurance at all. Why? Because most don't even know it exists. That is crazy. How can you help and get in on the action? Listen to find out. But first, before we go any further, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. My name is Madhur Duggar. I work in the IT and software M&A space, and this is my podcast series, M&A Insights. If you are interested in having a conversation around the strategic direction of your firm, are looking to grow your book and want some marketing and business development help, or are an investor looking to make an acquisition in the space, write to me at podcastwithmadhur, that's MADHUR, @gmail.com, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about SeedPod and what does it do?
Sure. Well, a little background on myself. For 20 plus years, I ran programs and built insurance programs for a large national broker, and left that to form SeedPod Cyber. And SeedPod Cyber, we focus exclusively on cyber insurance. So we've developed insurance programs for cyber insurance in which we leverage behind the firewall insights to help firms better manage their risk.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about the current challenges that you're looking to address here. First of all, are small businesses adequately insured against cyber risk today? And if not, why not? And how frequent is this risk and how bad is it?
Yeah, when we talk about the small businesses, and actually a report just came out from Swiss Re, one of the big reinsurers in the cyberspace recently. Only 10% of small businesses are covered by cyber insurance, period. So 10%. And so there's a large a number, obviously, of that marketplace which is uninsured. And even those that are insured, a large percentage of those most likely have inadequate coverage because they have what's called bolt-on coverage from their property or general liability as well. So you have this marketplace that is largely uninsured, and at the same time, they're the ones that have been most targeted on a percentage basis by cyber attacks. So certainly over the past 3 to 5 years, the 82% of ransomware attacks impact the small business segment, and 43 to 53% of all attacks are impacting or targeted towards the small business segment. So they have they have the least security in order to withstand these attacks. They don't have the insurance, and yet they're the most targeted. And just to add on top of it, we obviously always hear about the big businesses and the attacks that have occurred there. They have the balance sheets ultimately and the insurance to withstand something. The small businesses don't have the balance sheet. They don't have the insurance. And if there are statistics out there saying any business that's been attacked, small business, twice within 6 months, 66% of those go out of business, period.
Where does cyber risk come from? Do you think it comes from bad software, or do you think it comes from a bad deployment?
I would say most of it comes from bad deployment. You could argue it's bad software because the software didn't make it easy or intuitive enough to deploy it correctly. So we could certainly have that discussion. But typically it's in the configuration, how it's deployed, and then obviously how it's used. 87% of incidents occur because of an individual doing something that has an impact, and that could be clicking on a fish and giving credentials which give them access, or it could be a misconfiguration that was put in place that exposed the business, or it could be a piece of software that required certain things to be exposed in the environment that opened up bad guys to get in.
Who should own, in your opinion, deployment risk?
It's a great question. I think there's definitely culpability at the software design level, because as we talked about, you know, if you were putting and it's not just a topic of conversation here, it's at the government level as well, is if I'm putting together software, I have to put myself in the shoes of a reasonable person who's going to use it. And how are they going to use it? How are they going to install it? And if I'm making it that difficult for a reasonable person to put it in place, then I need to have some culpability around that. At the same time, you know, the individual or the business or the technology partner, you know, if they aren't applying kind of best standards or appropriate or just reasonable standards in terms of the deployment, there's culpability there as well here. Usually from the claim standpoint, in the event of as long as the deployment has not been done intentionally or with gross negligence, you know, the carrier is going to go ahead and cover it there. So they will, you know, kind of not really focus on the liability associated with it. They're just following the scope of their the insurance agreement in that situation.
You know, do you think small businesses are qualified to buy themselves cyber insurance? Like, will they know what they even need to buy for their business?
And that's one of the challenges is no, they do not. They do not. First, they may not, and probably don't know it exists, and then they're not sure what it covers. And then if they're asked to complete an application, they don't even know how to respond to the answers, or the questions on the application. So it's a very difficult process. And then when you look at the traditional distribution, how insurance is delivered, you have an insurance agent or broker often working with them, and they don't understand cyber as well. So they can't communicate it. And in many cases, because of that fact, they may not even talk about it because they don't want to get into the weeds on something that they don't understand. And so I think that's a driving part of why cyber insurance isn't as prevalent in the small business space as it is in other areas. A lot of carriers are beginning to look at the small business space now and trying to figure out how to get in. And I think one of the things that they're missing is the how it's being delivered, who is delivering it, and they seem to be focusing on other things ancillary to it that aren't being helpful to that small business here. I do think, and that's where I think the technology, and we partner with cybersecurity experts, managed service providers, managed security service providers, other solution providers because they do have the expertise. They can bring the solutions. We help them be able to articulate those solutions in the way that businesses usually understand, which is dollars and cents. What's the impact? We don't have to get in the weeds on everything on what CIS means or what NIST is or ISO, but we can talk about that a business your size on average is seeing this type of risk, and it's costing them anywhere between 350 and $30 million, just to pick numbers here. And what how much of that can you support, or would you want to support from a dollar standpoint? And then what can we do to reduce that? And some of that can be reduced, obviously, from a security solution standpoint. And then the balance is what insurance is there for.
Yes.
We take that risk and we transfer it.
So MSPs clearly have a big role to play here because they understand the technology they've deployed. They can help educate the small business owner on what their risks are. Do you think MSPs are playing this role right now in the marketplace, and how do you work with them to make this happen?
The MSPs are beginning to see their role in the marketplace. I would say in the past 6 months, it's almost accelerated and I think it's largely because they're being asked more and more about cyber insurance from their small business customers than they were before here. And at the same time, the MSPs are trying to sell cybersecurity solutions, and they're trying to figure out how can I best, articulate the need for this. And insurance can play a role in that. And the way that we work with managed service providers is we don't talk as much about the insurance, although that's obviously the core part of who we are and what we do. What we talk about is, we have a way in which we can, let you have an intelligent conversation about cybersecurity. And it starts with asking the small business person if they have a cyber insurance in place, and asking if they would like a review of it to make sure that it's relevant to their to what they do and their risk, as well as did the answers that they responded to in the application, do they actually were they answered truthfully? And I don't mean they lied, they misunderstood the questions. And invariably and we will do the analysis, we'll do the review, we'll come back with recommendations of what they can do from the insurance standpoint, as well as what they can save if they address those key issues. Because there's two things we want to, what we talk to our MSPs about from an insurance standpoint, they want to stress to their to the businesses is, insurance should be part of your security solution. And then two is you want to make sure that the insurance is going to be there if an incident occurs. And if you've misrepresented yourself through the application, that insurance may not be there. And you don't want to have that. And then obviously from our standpoint, because we're working with these MSPs, we get that behind the firewall look of the environment. We have our own analysis tools. We leverage tools that the MSPs have. That enables us to really, because we know more about the risks than the rest of the insurance competition out there, we're able to, that enables us to be better at risk selection and pricing. And we're often 30% less than the competition as a result. So that really helps the MSP communicate risk to the client using the insurance, and the client is feeling better at the end. They've saved money, and they know that they do have a backstop that will be there for them if something does occur.
What types of coverage are included in a comprehensive cyber insurance policy?
Right. But there's kind of four broad types of coverage. The first is liability coverage. So if something happens to me and you're my client and that damaged you in some way, you sue me. I need coverage in order to
Mm-hmm.
provide for damages that may result from that, and the legal costs, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the component. There's what's called first party costs. So these are the costs when an incident occurs, and these are the largest costs typically in
Mm-hmm.
a claim.
Mm-hmm.
When an incident occurs, my system is down. I've got to figure out what happened. I've got to get it back up and running. I
Mm-hmm.
may have to hire extra staff or spend
Mm-hmm.
more money to get it up and running. And then I have to spend extra staff while I'm down to do all the things my system used to do
Mm-hmm.
there, or I may suffer lost profit. So there's a lot of different costs that are associated here just to handle the incident and recover from it. Then there is there's the what's the profits and cost. If I suffer a ransomware attack and I'm down, which is the average number of days down is 26 days, I'm losing money. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not really open for business, or I'm not as open for business as I normally am, and therefore I've suffered that cost, lost profits, and so that coverage is also available there. And then there's the types of incidents that are what I call e-fraud type incidents. So social engineering attacks in which you pretend to be my CEO, I'm the controller. You send me an email saying you're in a meeting. I need 25,000 to close a deal. I wire you 25,000, but you're obviously not the CEO, so that's gone. So those e-fraud costs are probably, from a frequency standpoint and severity, the largest of the costs. That's
Mm-hmm.
also, is covered under a cyber insurance here.
Mm-hmm.
And the other kind of nuances within the coverage is that you also have to be there's concerned with under what conditions will this coverage be paid, and sometimes it depends on the type of loss. So if you recall, CrowdStrike a few months ago, had a software error that caused a lot of businesses to be down for a period of time there. Well, it wasn't due to a bad guy getting in there and messing around. It was due to a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some carriers had coverage and some businesses had coverage that would respond to it. Other carriers explicitly excluded it. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to kind of look at, making sure that you have coverage for being down, because of a third party, such as a CrowdStrike or whomever you might be using in
Mm-hmm.
your systems, that, they may do something wrong. Do you have coverage that can kind of keep you up and at least get your balance sheet back as a result of it?
You offer risk assessments. I don't know whether I want to call them audits, but risk assessments to organizations to help understand their cyber vulnerability. What does that look like in terms of is it a form that they have to fill out? Does their MSP work with them to help fill out that form? How long does it take for them to do all this?
Sure. When we work with MSP's clients, the risk assessment is from a business standpoint is very simple. There are 12 questions that they answer. They're all questions that they know because it's just, what's your address? What's your revenues?
Okay.
Did you have any losses? What are your policies and procedures around wireless transfer instructions?
Mm-hmm.
That's about it. And
Okay.
then what we do is we do a scan of the environment externally, and we review and the assets and review kind of the deployment of the security tools in partnership with
Okay.
the MSP. We
Mm-hmm.
take that information, we line it up against best practice security standards, and we produce a risk analysis. that shows a couple of things. First of all, because we tie in claims data, we're able to say, you're Mr. or Ms. Business, this is you're in this industry, here are the risks, here's the cost of loss that are typical for your size of business and your industry. Here's where you are today with regards to your security. Here's where you should be. Here's the gaps. Here's how you should be thinking about prioritizing and resolving those. Now, they have an MSP who's helping them through that process. We also, from the insurance side, we say, this is for your industry and your risk. Here's what you need to be thinking about from the insurance standpoint, and here's the solution there.
This assessment that you offer to businesses, is there a charge for this assessment?
There's no charge for the assessment.
Yeah.
Our money is made through the sales of the insurance itself here, and it's relatively, as they say, lightweight. In other words, they don't have to do a lot of things to set up their systems for this assessment to proceed.
Businesses have to be compliant with things like HIPAA, just regulatory compliance, right? When you do your assessment, would you assess against those requirements? And say,
for regulated industry, there's an additional set of areas that we'll look at from with HIPAA as an example, and now with CMMC coming out and looking at if they're in financial services or even if we also are spending more time than we were looking at privacy, because privacy regulations are becoming more of
big deal,
an issue as well. Certainly.
Yeah. Agreed. What should be the approach for regulation in this space? It's a very broad question. I apologize for just throwing it at you, but what are your thoughts here?
Well, I think from a regulatory standpoint, going back to the beginning of our discussion, we have to kind of look at who are the ones in the equation that are or should be responsible, in defending and preparing, and I think it's really going to be the software developers, and then it's also hardware in certain situations as well. And then really looking at the MSPs or the other professionals that are being in. And today there isn't, as you said, a certification for MSPs. I think that's coming down the road. Now you have, I forget the number of states. I want to say it's 16 states, maybe going to 23 states that have their own privacy regulations here. And then you also have, from a cybersecurity framework standpoint, you've got NIST, you've got ISO, you've got high trust if you're in healthcare. CIS isn't necessarily a framework, but similar. And now you have CMMC, which is based on a certain subset of NIST. So you have a lot of different areas to kind of focus on. And frameworks that may be competing with each other here. I do think that there should be a uniform privacy regulation standard. I think there should be a uniform security framework that we can agree to. If we're talking the small business space here, outside of maybe healthcare and financial services, which already have are being regulated. That's what we want to get to. And I really think insurance can play a role in certain extents. They've kind of, and this has, been a positive over the past couple of years. Insurance has kind of maybe, begin defining those standards because no one else was defining them, at least in the small business space. So that's an area, but I do think to have kind of a common set of controls. I think CIS has done a great job with their implementation group one, at least establishing kind of minimum standards,
Mhm.
and that's a good place to start. But there's other places too. It's just let's settle on kind of the core, and I do think too. I remember a quote by another insurance carrier executive when they were talking about the AI and the impact of AI on cybersecurity and the vulnerabilities that could come out of it. And he said, the two letters that keep me up at night are not AI, they're XP. It's because he's not worried about the AI. He's worried about those old, unpatched, end of life systems that are still prevalent. And
Yes.
so when you think about, reasonable standards, let's make sure that they're patching their systems. Let's make sure that
Mhm.
they've got multi-factor authentication. Let's make sure they've got a backup. Let's make sure that we can know that they're doing all those things there. And if they, and security awareness training is part of it as well.
Mhm.
And if we can get them to do those things, that's 80% of what's, causing the bad guys to make money these days there. And so we don't have to throw a lot of other things out there, at least at this point in time too.
Let's get the basics right, because
Right.
that's where all the damage is going to happen. I can't think of a better place to end this podcast. That's a great recommendation on a very, very important topic. Doug, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you doing this with me. I am very excited to have this podcast with you.
Oh, well, thank you so very much, Mentor. I really appreciate having the conversation, and hope it's a benefit to the listeners out there.
Same here. Can't wait to get this out.
Okay, great.